This conference will now be recorded.
On the occasion of World Cancer Day. So according to the WHO, 17 people die every minute from the cancer in the world. The World Cancer Day is observed with a particular theme. The day is organized by the Union for International Cancer Control. Cancer is the second leading cause of death in the world. Various types of cancer occur in the most common cancer that affect the people of India are lung, breast, cervical, neck, brain, and colorectal cancer. So in 2000, World Cancer Day was originated in Paris. The aim of this is to improve the quality of the cancer patient and to the continued investment and the advancement of cancer research and prevention and treatment. So every year, the World Cancer Day is celebrated on 4th of February. The purpose is to support the World Cancer Declaration. The primary purpose of the celebrating this day is to reduce the number of cancer patients and to reduce the death rate causing due to it. So at the same time, make a people to aware how to identify the symptoms of cancer, educate the people, as well as to prepare government and non-government organizations to help in fighting this deadly disease all over the world. So theme of this year Cancer Day is I am and I will. So this theme is for 3 years. This is for 2019 to 2021. So the main theme is I am and I will. So today we have Dr. Imtiaz Ahmed, sir, to deal with the radiotherapy. Sir, I'll briefly introduce Dr. Imtiaz Ahmed, sir. He has completed his MBBS in 2005 by RGHS and MD in 2011 by RGHS University. Sir, at presently working as a chief consultant and administrator in clinical services in KLE Belgaum Cancer Hospital. Sir, his area of interest are head and neck, CNS, thoracic and pediatric tumors, and SBRT, SRS, and SRT. So I'll hardly welcome Dr. Imtiaz Ahmed, sir, to deal with the topic on radiation therapy. So please.
Am I audible to all? Hello?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yeah.
You're loud and clear, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for such a kind introduction. At the outset, I would like to thank Principal Madam and the entire organizing team for this webinar. And good morning to all of you who have joined from India as well as from our other country, that is Ethiopia. So as Madam has already said about World Cancer Day's importance, so there are different treatment modalities related to cancer therapy. And one of the modality which is radiation therapy, which I deal with. So I would like to share a few details about radiation therapy to all of you. So my presentation will include a few introduction about cancer, and then going on to what exactly is radiation therapy and how does radiation kill the cancer cells, what are the different machines we have, and how do we basically plan a radiation, and after radiation, what are the outcomes, and how do you take care of yourself and doing radiation, that is radiation protection. In my presentation, I have kept my presentation as simple as possible. I am aware that the audience is more of nursing staff as well as some of the medical students. So I will not like to make it more of toxic radiation. I'd like to keep it as simple as possible so that you take some message from here. So starting with some introduction, as Madam has already said about some of the incidences. So if you look from the global cancer statistics, there's an organization called as the Globocon. So recently they have uploaded the cancer statistics 2020 Globocon. So if you look at the incidence, close to 19.3 million patients every year are affected with cancer, and if you put it in the timeline, so every 2 seconds you already have one cancer patient being diagnosed. So if you look at the prevalence means whatever the new cancers and the old cancer, it is to the tune of 50 million patients are there with cancer at this moment of the time. And if you look at the mortality, very high mortality, as Madam has already said, second cause of death remains to be cancer. And if you look at the incidences, so if you look at the incidences, the worldwide, lung cancer remains to be the topmost cancer, as well as from the mortality point of view, most of the patients die of lung cancer itself. Whereas in females, if you look, it is more of breast cancers where patients suffer with, and also the mortality is high related to breast. Coming to our own country, that is India, as well as the people who are joined from Ethiopia. If you look from men point of view, the top 5 cancers are most of the time it is the oral cavity and lip are the top cancer, followed by lung, then stomach, colorectal, and esophageal cancers. Whereas in the females, it is the breast, cervical cancers, ovarian tumor, that is the gynecological tumors, followed by lip and oral cavity and colorectal. Whereas in Ethiopia, our country is a 130 crore population, and I think Ethiopia it is 1/10 of what population India is having. So slightly variation is there from the top cancers. If you look from men point of view, it is colorectal is the most common cancer, followed by prostate, and followed by hematological toxicity, leukemia, and then non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, followed by liver. Whereas in females, more or less, it remains the same what we see in India, that is breast cancer, followed by cervical cancer, remains to be the most common type of cancer. So we know the cancer burden is high in our own countries. So what exactly is this cancer? So normally in a normal cell also multiplies, normal cell also has its role and function to do. It is basically the growth and regulation of normal cell is controlled by our own DNA. Whereas in cancer cell, what exactly happens is, it is an uncontrolled, unregulated growth of these cells, which transform it themselves into a cancer cell. So basically, there will be some mutations in the DNA. That is, the genetic mutations happen in the cancer cell. This mutation leads to formation of the cancer. And normally the cancer grows in the local area, and then through the bloodstream, it spreads to the other organs, as well as through a lymphatic spreads to the lymph nodes. Then it becomes an advanced stage. As you can see in this diagram, there's a small growth over the tip of the nose. So the normal skin growth has unregulated. So what causes this cancer? Basically, there is a genetic mutation. So why does this genetic mutation happen? So to highlight that, there are some risk factors. These factors basically lead to genetic mutations in our cancer cells. They go and damage that. So those are mainly tobacco, alcohol. So tobacco and alcohol are the substance abusers. So followed by infection. Some of the viruses, that is the HPV virus, hepatitis virus, also cause this genetic damage. Followed by sedentary lifestyle leading to obesity and decrease consumption of more of antioxidant diets like green vegetables and other things lead to damage to this DNA. As well as you know, there is a lot of pollution related to the water pollution, air pollution, and other things, the pollutants which are responsible for damaging these things. I think these things will be talked in detail, and how to prevent this will be dealt in the next topic. So most, as you see here, since these risk factors close to the tune of 50% can be prevented by cultivating the healthy habits. So cancer can be prevented before it arises by following these healthy habits. So what once the patient develops cancer, what do we do? So we have some cancer treatment therapies. So the main 3 pillars are the surgery. By surgery, you try to remove the tumor, whatever is visible by the surgeons, handled by the surgical oncology team. Followed by chemotherapy, we have some chemotherapy drugs which kill the cancer cells. So these chemotherapy drugs are delivered, handled by medical oncology team. and then we have radiation therapy. So here we use the radiation, radiation to kill the cancer cells handled by radiation oncology. So this is the topic which we'll be discussing in brief today in this today's talk. So what is basically radiotherapy? Radiotherapy is nothing but a clinical modality dealing with the use of ionizing radiations in the treatment of patients with malignant neoplasms. So what exactly is this ionizing radiation? So you all must have seen this picture during your 10th physics subjects as well as in your 12th subjects. I'm sure you must be aware. Just try to recollect this picture. So as you can see in this picture, it's a you have a sunlight visible spectrum. This is the electromagnetic spectrum of different radiations. So you can, as you can see in this diagram, so you have the visible spectrum, that is a waveguide. Whatever rays are below that are not harmful rays. So the rays which are above that, that is the high frequency rays, low wavelength rays, that is the ultraviolet rays, and followed by that there are gamma rays. These are the rays which are harmful. So not only to the normal cells, they are harmful to the cancer cells. We try to use these gamma rays for the treatment of cancer cells. So ionizing radiation basically can be divided into two types. One is the electromagnetic, as I told you in the spectrum. The other one is the particulate. So under the electromagnetic spectrum, we have X-rays and gamma rays, which are commonly used. In the particulate therapy, we have electrons as well as the neutrons and protons, which are used. So most of the time, it is the X-rays and gamma rays which are used in our radiation treatment plan. So briefly to understand, if you go back to the history, how it all started. So almost more than a century back, X-rays were discovered. You all must be familiar with some of the phases. That is, discovery of X-rays was done by William Conrad Röntgen, as well as followed by radioactivity. So some of them are already, some you have natural substances which decay and produce some of the rays. So that is called as the radioactivity, was discovered by Henry Becquerel. And Madame Curie, you all must be aware, she was the one who discovered radium. So we all owe from our department to this pioneers who all were received Nobel Prize for the wonderful discoveries what they had done. So there are two types of radiation treatment. One is called as a teletherapy, also called as the external beam radiotherapy. Here the radiation is delivered away from the tumor. So we have some machines called as a telecobalt machine or the cobalt 60, which produces gamma rays, and you have linear accelerator called as LINAC, which produce X-rays. Brachytherapy, here we administer radioactive source very close, like directly we put the applicators inside the tumor tissue and then treat them. Depending on the application, it can be called as an interstitial brachytherapy, intraluminal brachytherapy, intracavitary, or surface or mold therapy. Most of the time, it is the sources here is used are iridium 192, cesium 137. So let's understand what this exactly is, the external beam radiation or the teletherapy. So telecobalt was the first machine which was started, followed by now the advanced radiation machines are nothing but the LINACs. So telecobalt is basically outdated, but let's understand because it has treated many patients. So telecobalt, in this you have a cobalt source. This is how the machine looks. So if you see at the treatment head, so there is a cobalt source. This cobalt source is a radioactive source. So once because of its radioactivity, it starts decaying. Whenever it decays, it releases some rays called as a gamma rays. Those are the ones that are used to treat the cancer cells. So whenever it is in the on position, the source comes near the treatment surface, and then the gamma rays come out. So this is how a cobalt machine looks. It is most of the places it is outdated now. Now we have replaced with advanced radiation machines called as a linear accelerator or a LINAC. This is how a linear accelerator looks. Here basically you don't have any radioactive source. Here with a switch of a button, the machine generates the X-rays. These X-rays are very powerful X-rays. They are mega voltage X-rays, not the kilo voltage. So because of the mega voltage X-ray capacity, they are able to treat the deeper tumors and also spare the skin. So now we know that there are machines which produces the X-rays which can be used to treat cancer. But how does this X-rays treat the cancer cell? So to understand, let's understand a little bit of the biological effects of the radiation on the cell. So normally whenever the X-rays are hit to the patient or given to the patient, so the primary target is the DNA of the cancer cells. So the radiation goes and damages the DNA of the cancer cells. Once the DNA is damaged, so this is how the DNA gets damaged. The X-rays either directly go and hit the DNA, causing the direct effect, which is 30% of the times, and most of the times, majority of the times, it is the X-rays which go and act on the water molecules which are present in our body, and these water molecules produce the free radicals. Because of the presence of free radicals, the DNA gets damaged. This is how radiation causes damage to the DNA. So once this DNA is damaged, there are multiple damages can happen. It can be a base damage, depending on, more than 1,000, it is a base damage, or we can have a single strand breaks, or it is a double strand. The double strand breaks are the lethal ones. Once these double strand breaks happen by the use of these X-rays, so the cell cannot multiply. Whenever it tries to multiply, because this damage is not repaired, the cell goes for a death. So this is how radiation causes the death of the cancer cell. So we use that for our clinical use. So whenever we use for a clinical use, our aim of radiotherapy is, so we know it kills the cancer cells as well as it can kill the normal cells. So our aim should be to give maximum dose to the tumor as well as minimum dose to the surrounding normal tissue. Then only we can say that we are giving a beneficial effect to the patient. So just giving you a simple example, once the radiation goes and hits the target. So as you can see in this diagram, if I take a cervical cancer, it is in the pelvis, that is in the front of the cervical cancer, you have the urinary bladder, posteriorly you have the rectum. So these are the normal structures, urinary bladder and rectum. And I have to treat my cancer which is there in the cervix. Whenever I give radiation, I should ensure that I give more dose to the cervix of the tumor area and less dose to this normal structure. So this is our aim. Then only we can give a beneficial effect. So how do we do it this in such scenarios? I'll tell you later. So radiation is not limited to 1 or 2 cancer sites. Basically, for treating almost all malignant tumors from head to toe, you can take head and neck cancer, thoracic, gastric. There's a different role of radiation in different ways, but we are using radiation for almost all cases. Not only malignant, we also treat the benign diseases. Benign ones are the ones which do not spread, which do not metastasize. They are basically at the localized area only. They keep growing. Even for those diseases also, radiation can be used. So for benign tumors like the pituitary tumors, the CP angle tumor, that is the schwannomas, recurrent keloids. Depending on how we use radiation, that is the intent of treatment. So many a times radiation alone can cure the cancers. That is called as a radical intent or the definitive radiotherapy. Most of the head and neck cancers we treat with radical intent. With radiation alone, we can cure the patients. Gynecological cancers, lung cancers, esophageal cancers, anal tumors, these are the sites where radiation alone can be used to cure the cancers. Post-op RT. So whenever surgery is done, after surgery, there is a high chance of tumor coming back. To reduce that incidence, we use radiation after surgery. Some of the sites of head and neck, gynae, GI, neuro, breast tumors, where radiation can help in reducing the recurrences. Where surgery is required, sometimes surgery is not possible because of the advanced nature of the disease. So you give radiation before surgery, that is called as a pre-operative radiation therapy in cases of rectum and esophagus. Once we give radiation, then the tumor shrinks, then it becomes easy for the surgeon to do a surgery. Adjuvant radiation therapy, some of the tumors can be treated with chemotherapy alone. During that scenario, radiation consolidates whatever results are received with chemotherapy. It's also called as adjuvant or consolidative radiotherapy. And many a times we cannot cure the cancers. So, but that doesn't mean that we should not do them anything. So we'll have to do relieve their symptoms like pain and raised intracranial tension. So palliative radiation helps in reducing these symptoms in cases of bone mets, brain mets, spinal cord compression. So how exactly do I do radiation? So radiation, whenever I do, we define the radiation in terms of some units. The unit is called as a gray. So much gray is delivered to the patient. So if you see in the head and neck scenario, whenever I give definitive radiation, it will be 70 gray in 35 fractions. Radiation is basically done on everyday basis, Monday to Friday, that is 5 fractions per week. Each session will last to less than 10 minutes. So patient comes every day, Monday to Friday, takes radiation and go back home. Saturday, Sunday, it will be a weekend off. So like that, the patient goes on his treatment for 5 to 7 weeks. Similarly, in cervix also, the radiation treatment goes for 8 weeks. So we have a combination of external radiation and internal radiation for cervix. So I'll discuss in the coming slides about that. Whenever we do post-op RT, that is adjuvant post-surgery, so the duration of treatment remains to be for 5 weeks. So radiation has evolved quite a lot. So as you know, technology has advanced quite a lot. Similar to that, the technological advances have taken place enormously in the field of radiation. Unlike earlier, the fear was there, we are unable to spare the normal tissues. That is why the radiation is more harmful. That concept is totally gone. Now we have a very high technological advances where precisely we can target the tumor. So we have evolved along with technology. So the 2D era, that is a two-dimensional treatment where the benefit of radiation was far less compared to harmful effects, has been completely overridden by advanced techniques. Now we do IMRT, that is the intensity modulated radiotherapy and image guided radiotherapy. So these techniques are the latest ones, and these are the standard radiation treatments what we are going to do. So just to explain you what exactly they are, what is the difference. So now if you see the two-dimensional diagram, in the upper diagram, so the oval shaped one, the horseshoe shaped one is the target. Just encircling that is the center circle one is the spinal cord, that is a normal tissue. So we have to give radiation to the horseshoe shaped target. At the same time, we have to spare the circle, that is a normal tissue. If you see in the 2D era, we were unable to do anything. Whatever dose the target receives, that is the tumor receives, the same dose the normal tissue receives. When we move to the 3D CRT, that is a three-dimensional conformer radiotherapy. Here, little bit of normal tissue is spared, but still there is a significant dose going to the normal tissue. Coming to the IMRT era, that is the intensity modulated radiation therapy, you can see here beautifully, only the tumor is receiving a red colored dose, and the normal tissue, that is the circle, is not receiving any red colored dose. So this is the advantage. So to understand in the analogical form, you can see an artist, how he tries to sculpt a doll. If you can see in 2D, we cannot imagine what it is. Coming to 3D, we can vaguely have an idea, but in the IMRT era, you can see that how beautifully it has been sculpted. Each and everything is nicely defined. The same thing will reflect in IMRT. Now, once we know that we have to do IMRT with this advanced techniques, so how does the planning go in this advanced techniques? So we have different steps of radiation planning. So there are around 4 steps, that is simulation, treatment planning 2, and then treatment execution. Various steps occur. I'll just show you with some diagrammatically how it exactly is. So what we do is, I'm taking an example of an head and neck cancer patient. So this was an head and neck cancer patient which I'm doing. We have some immobilization devices called as a thermoplastic mask. These are special masks. Once we put in hot water, they become soft, and the same mask can be put on the patient, and then within few minutes it becomes takes the shape of the patient's contour. So by doing this, we are ensuring the patient movements are reduced to as minimal as possible. So once I immobilize the patient, what I do is I take him into a CT scan room. In the CT scan room, the same position is reproduced. The patient is positioned like that. Patient doesn't move anything. And then I acquire the CT images of the patient. Once these CT images are acquired, these CT images are transferred to my software, radiation planning software. So in the software, these are the images of the patient, what I have already done a CT scan. So in these images, I define different targets. So I know where the tumor is based on the CT scan. I define various targets. We have our own guidelines how to draw the targets. So some terminologies are there, something called as a gross tumor volume, GTV. That is the visible tumor. I have to draw that. I counter in each and every slices of the patient. and then CTV, it is a clinical target volume. So we cannot, whatever we see is a tumor, but the other adjoining areas also we can have some amount of microscopic disease. So we also have to treat that areas. So that areas was called as a CTV, clinical target volume. Because of some geometric uncertainty, that there can be a slight variation when we set up the patient. To cover up that, we give a small margin called as a planning target volume. So these are with respect to tumor. We contour that. And then not only tumor, we also have other normal tissues around the tumor. Like in case of head and neck, you have the parotid, you have the mandible, you have the spinal cord, you have the eyes, you have the optic. All these structures are very nicely contoured. It's like basically you are trying to paint all the areas, and then you define one virtual patient. So this is how a patient will be, where the red color areas are the tumor areas, the surrounding ones are the normal tissues. So now our aim of radiotherapy is to give maximum radiation to that red areas and minimum radiation to the surrounding area. So as I told you, with IMRT technique, we can achieve that. So this is how it happens. So as you can see, the red color area is the tumor area, and the surrounding ones are the little less critical areas. So it is pairing nicely to the other structures. Once I design that this radiation planning is acceptable for my patient, I can execute this. All these parameters are shifted to the machines. So machine parameters will be shifted. Our technologist who operates the machine, with a click of a button, all the things happen. She need not do anything. The patient is brought on the day of treatment, made to lie down on the machine couch, and our technologist, with the switch of a button, operates the machine, and the radiation is delivered to the patient as we had planned. And hence, every day patient comes for radiation 5 to 10 minutes, 5 days a week. That is from Monday to Friday, and over 5 to 7 weeks. This is how the radiation treatment from external beam radiotherapy point of view happens. That is a teletherapy. We also have something called as brachytherapy, internal brachytherapy. As a radiation oncologist, we just don't deal with computers. We also handle patients just like the surgeons. So in brachytherapy, it is not the X-rays, it is the gamma rays treatment. This is how a brachytherapy machine looks like. If you can see in the first picture, I'm showing you a pencil with a pointed nib. So the source, that is a radioactive source, will be a size of a lead. It is in a few mm. Even though it is so small, it is a very powerful rays it produces. So the source can be iridium 192 or the cobalt 60 source. Nowadays, as I told you, the technology has advanced enormously. You are not going to handle it by your hands. Everything will be remote control. That is why SDR, remote after loading, computer-based planning is being done now. Depending on where I do brachytherapy, how I do brachytherapy, it can be an intracavity. Like in gynecological cancers, in the picture here, you can see the cervical tumors are treated. We have some applicators. We place the applicators inside the uterine cavity and try to treat it. Whereas in esophagus and the bronchus, we have intraluminal brachytherapy. On the surface, on the skin, we have something called as a mold or the surface brachytherapy. Interstitial, we put the needles directly into the tumor tissue. So these are applicators. These are not radioactive sources. These are just the applicators. To better understand, I will give you a picture what we actually do. So if you can look here, this is a patient where there is a lesion at the tongue. Small ulcer growth is there on the tongue. So here, this is how we do brachytherapy. So we identify, we localize, we put some catheters. One by one catheters, we are going to put it in the tumor tissue with a certain geometry. This is how the patient will be inserted with these catheters for this case. And then on the computer, we are going to plan how much radiation has to go, how it has to go. And then these catheters are connected to the machine. As you can see in his diagram, the brachytherapy machine is visible. It is small. It is a small portable machine, just like an ultrasound machine. Here, the patients are connected to that machine. And then the miniature source, what I showed you, that it looks like a pencil tip like, that comes out from that machine and then goes and delivers the radiation to the tumor site. So for brachytherapy, unlike external beam radiotherapy, the treatment is not going to be long. It is going to be very short, for 1 week duration. and patients are going to be treated 2 radiations per day. So now we know we have machines, we have better techniques to deliver radiation, and we have delivered radiation. So now what happens after we do radiation? So we have to see whether the tumor has responded or not. So to know that, we have some response criteria. So post treatment, the patient can go for a complete response. This is what we are trying to achieve. Complete response means patient is not going to have any tumor post treatment. That is, he has become no evidence of disease, the NED. Partial response, less than complete response, is called as a partial response. That response can be to the tune of 30%. Stable disease, if it is remains the same or slight increase of 20%, is also called as a stable disease. Progressive disease, you have done treatment, still the tumor has increased from 20% of what it was earlier, so it's called as a progressive. We try to ensure that we are going to have a complete response. This is how the post treatment the responses can be assessed. I'll share you with some of the pictures of our patients where we have treated. So if you look carefully here in this diagram, so this was a patient of a soft palate tumor. As you can see in the upper drawing, there was a tumor which we treated with radiation and chemotherapy, and then the patient after treatment is not showing any disease at the tumor site, so he had a complete response. Similarly, there was another patient. As you can see here, there is a neck node, large neck node. Post treatment, he doesn't show any neck node mass there, so there's a complete response. Similarly, there is a lesion just behind the tongue on the upper image, and then post treatment there is a complete response. These are the clinical pictures. Radiologically also we can assess where the sites where we are unable to see from a naked eye. So this is a larynx case where there is a huge mass. Post treatment, there is a complete response of the treatment. On the left hand side is a tumor, on the right hand side it has completely disappeared. Oropharynx, that is a tonsillar tumors. So here also there is a complete tumor is there, and then post treatment there is no. Cervical tumors, the cervical cancer, there is a large mass in the cervix. Treatment has been done and there is a complete response of the treatment. Lung tumors, you can see a large mass on the lung in the right upper to middle lobe of the lung, and then post therapy there is a complete response of the tumor. Esophagus, so same thing, excellent results post treatment. So now you all must be worried, radiation also gives a lot of side effects. So what about that? So because of the advanced radiation techniques, the toxicities are far limited, and then we divide the toxicities into acute, that is during the time of radiation up to 3 months, and then late, beyond 3 months, we call it as late toxicities. As you can see in our own clinical practice, when we treat the head and neck tumors, the ulcers in the mouth, that is called as a mucositis, are most common, and the skin changes, dermatitis, are also seen. As you can see in these pictures, the upper pictures are during the radiation time as well as at the completion of radiation treatment. Some patients had skin darkening, mild side effects were seen. Within 2 weeks, all these toxicities have resolved. So we need not worry about toxicities. In fact, we should not tell them as toxicities. Basically, they are accompaniments. Whenever we do treatment, they are along with the treatment, these are seen and they fade away post treatment. So now we have treated the patient. Now we know what are the possible side effects, and we know how we can limit it. So radiation per se, can we safeguard ourselves, because radiation per se are harmful? Yes, there are strong guidelines. You need not worry about the toxicities or the side effects of radiation for your own sake. So something called as low as reasonably achievable, ALARA principle we're following. That is trying to limit the shortest time and trying to ensure the shielding is done, and then trying to limit yourself, keeping yourself away. All these principles can be followed and ensure that you don't get any radiation for yourself. So nowadays you have a very strict protocol. All monitoring devices are there, and every 3 months, every 6 months to 3 months, your monitoring devices are checked. Hardly any radiation dose happens. Even personnel with workers who are female workers who are pregnant also, they are safely can carry them. That is how safe it is. Need not worry. Okay, all monitoring devices are there. All regulations are will be followed. So with the present day machines, there's a very loss. Basically, you are not going, you are not handling anything. Everything is done remotely. So all this fear or myth related to radiation harming yourself is not there. So there is also some myths related to radiation. As I told you, radiation exposure scare. People worry that by entering the department itself, I may get radiation exposure and I may get cancer. So that myth is not there, as I've already discussed to you. And radiation doesn't mean that it is just you cannot do cure the tumors with radiation. Radiation just means it is the end of care and palliation only we can do. It is not so. As I have told you with our own clinical experience, it can be used to treat all different types of cancers. And also about toxicities, I told you with the advancements of technology, we have limited as much as possible about this toxicity. So there cannot be any fear related to toxicity. These are just an accompaniment. So in nutshell, to say, so one should have a sound knowledge and information about the treatment, and because with this sound knowledge and information, these myths can be overcome. So that is my message from today's talk, and I thank you all for your patient listening, and let's all hope for a better tomorrow. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Imtiaz, for dealing with the topic regarding the radiotherapy. Sir has dealt in detail regarding the brachytherapy, teletherapy, and the side effects and what care has to be taken by the each one of us. And students will be posted as a part of their clinical posting in Belgaum Cancer Hospital. So I hope sir will explain you practically during that time. If you have any queries or doubts, you can ask to sir. Girish, from your side, any clarification? Any clarification?
Hello?
Hello?
No, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, once more, I'll thank Dr. Imtiaz for accepting our invitation in a short period of time and coming and dealing with the topic in detail. Thank you, sir. Now I'll request Mr. Honagoda, Assistant Professor of Medical Surgical Nursing Department, to introduce Mr. Girish Degami. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Now, next topic is on cancer awareness and its prevention, which will be dealt by Mr. Girish Degami. Girish Degami, he is our alumni. He studied, he's completed his diploma nursing and masters in our institute only, and presently is working as a faculty of nursing, College of Health and Medical Science, Bulera University, Ethiopia. Now I request Mr. Girish to deal with his topic, that is on cancer awareness and preventive measures. Over to you, Girish. Girish?
Yes, sir. If you can share the PowerPoint, sir. Yeah.
Yes, it is shared. Can you see the PPT?
Yes, sir. I can see. Sir.
Yes. You can start now.
Am I audible?
Yes, Girish, you are audible.
Yes, sir. Good
Increase
morning
your
to one
volume.
and all.
Please
My name is
increase your
Girish
volume.
Degami.
Girish, increase your volume.
Yes, sir. Okay,
Yes.
sir. Just a second.
Okay.
Am I audible now, sir?
Yes, you can now.
Yes. Good morning, one and all. My name is Girish Degami. I am an alumni of KLE Institute of Nursing, South East, already said by Mr. Honagoda, sir. And to begin with, I would like to thank Dr. Professor Sudha Reddy for giving me this opportunity, followed by Professor Preeti Bhopali for again giving me this opportunity. I would like to thank Mr. Gulgada Patil sir for organizing it so smoothly, and all the students of Yale Institute of Nursing Sciences for attending this webinar. So I would be dealing with regarding the awareness and the cancer prevention, especially because let me tell you about awareness. Because most of the developing countries, mainly like India is of course it's quite advanced related to cancer and its prevention. But other developing countries who are poverty driven, especially in Africa, cancer is not been given that much of weightage, not much of value, because they consider it as a disease of elite, very rich people. But it's not true. Cancer is one of the most common disease which is throughout the world. But developing countries, especially in the African countries, they have to give weightage to this. Uh, next slide, sir. Yeah. There are common types of cancer, mainly which is already been said by Dr. Imtiaz, like colon cancer, lung cancer, breast cancer, cervical cancer, prostate cancer, and skin cancer. These are the most common cancers which we come across whenever we are working with the patients with who are suffering with cancer. Um, next slide, please. So when you go for estimation of cancer cases and deaths throughout the world, we can estimate that the number of cases, the most of the cases with cancer are of prostate cancer, which is quite common with males, which is followed by breast cancer among women, and then the least number of patients who come to the hospital with cancer are cervical cancer, which are in women. But when we, in either way, when we go for the deaths related to cancer, the most number of deaths in cancer patients is because of the lung cancer, then followed by colon cancer and breast cancer and so on. But lung cancer is most common because people has to breathe. So whenever there is any cancer related to lungs, mainly the patient dies because of the complications and the signs and symptoms of the cancer, because it obstructs the breathing pattern of the patients, and it in turn uh, allows him to breathing difficulty, and followed by choking and death. Next slide, please. Some of the facts about colon cancer. We'll discuss one by one all these cancers, which are most common, which I already listed down. Basic facts about colon cancer. Uh, it is about second leading cause of cancer deaths throughout the world, which is already been said in the graph. Second leading case of cancer deaths in the world. Third most common cancer in men and women. Early colon cancer usually has no symptoms, because here the patient will never come to know that he has cancer until the signs and symptoms are very, very severe. Signs and symptoms typically occur only in advanced colon cancer. The patients who have advanced colon cancer, they only will be identifying this kind of cancer until it is very severe. One of the most preventable types of cancer. This cancer comes in the bracket of the most preventable types of cancers, uh, which can be easily prevented, because these are formed in the forms of polyps. Polyps, you can say that it's like a grape-like structures. And once you remove these polyps in the initial stage, we can easily prevent these polyps to grow on and form a cluster, and then in turn result into blockage of the alimentary tract. So once these polyps are removed by surgical means and followed by radiation therapy and other oncological treatments, we can easily prevent this cancer to grow and lead into, and it can in turn lead into any severe consequences. Next slide, please. Okay, when you go for the screening of this cancer, you can tell the patient whenever the patient is in the hospital a yearly fecal occult blood test, which is most common type of testing of the stool. You can say that whenever you go to the hospital, there is a stool examination, that is fecal occult blood (FOBT) or fecal immunochemical test. These are the tests which can be done for these patients to identify if there is any form of cancer. There's another one called as flexible sigmoidoscopic, which can be done by after every 5 years once the patient is in the risk of cancer. A yearly FOBT and FIT plus flexible sigmoidoscopy every 5 years, preferred over either test alone. So you can tell the patient instead of taking one test, he can go for all these tests every 5 years if he is diagnosed with what is the colon cancer. Double contrast barium enema every 5 years can be prescribed for this patient. Barium enema is a type of enema which is given in this barium is used and the contrast medium is used. In this, you can easily find out if there is any kind of obstruction, and which can be found out in the form of fluoro as well as in X-ray, and you can identify this. Colonoscopy is prescribed every 10 years. We usually do not prescribe colonoscopy for frequently because there is chances that this during the procedure you can rupture or injure this polyps, and it can in turn start bleeding and another complications start. So colonoscopy is not prescribed unless it is very important for the diagnostic procedure. Next slide, please. Let's go with the breast cancer, which is quite common in women. This is most frequently diagnosed cancer in women. So in women, it is most frequent, means most common type of cancer form, which is found in women. Women have a 1 in 7 chance of getting invasive breast cancer. So around 1 in 7 chance are there for women to get breast cancer throughout their life. The chance of dying from breast cancer is about 1 in 33. So if there are 33 patients or around 30 patients with breast cancer, one has a risk of getting dying because of this cancer. Breast cancer death rates are going down usually. Nowadays, we can see that breast cancer rates are going down because of the awareness, because of the advertisement, because of the lot of information around the media as well as in the hospitals and by the healthcare workers, which has been advertised throughout the world regarding breast cancer and its prevention and its treatment. Because of all these things, measures, breast cancer rates have been come down. The mortality and morbidity has quite come down because of this. Yeah, next slide, please. When you go for screening of this breast cancer, early signs of breast cancer usually an abnormal detected in mammogram before it can be felt by women or healthcare professional. See, mammogram is something which will not be done quite commonly unless you are more than 40 years old or after the menopause. But what happens is once the lady crosses the age of 35 or 40 years old, it is prescribed nowadays that she should go for a mammogram if she finds any kind of lump or any kind of hard mass or a moving hard mass over her breast. So uh, it should be a practice throughout the world, especially the information and the awareness is given in the high schools and other places in the college level, that after the 40 years of age, a woman should go for breast examination in the form of mammogram. A yearly clinical breast examination should be done by a qualified um, gynecologist, which can be helpful for identifying any kind of breast cancer. In 20s and 30s of age group of ladies, girls, clinical breast exam every 3 years should be done if she has any kind of suspicion that she is having any lump over her breast. So in 20s and 30s, if a girl is finding any kind of lump over her breast, she should immediately go and talk to the clinician or physician regarding her lump, and she can get for a mammogram if necessary. Any age, a lady of any age, report any kind of breast changes such as lump to a doctor right away. So if she finds any kind of lump over her breast, she should immediately go to the hospital and meet a gynecologist. or even she can go to any general practitioner also and find out if there is any severity or serious things. If it is increased risk, talk to the doctor about starting screening earlier or having more frequent exams. So if the doctor says that it's quite serious, she can go for a mammogram. And in mammogram, you can easily find out whether it is serious, whether it is metastatic, whether it is a benign tumor or any kind of tumor. Most of the time, it may be just a lump. So whatever is there, the girl should get the proper treatment for this. Next slide, please. Let's go with the lung cancer, which is most common cause of death throughout the world because of cancer. Tobacco smoke causes more than 8 out of 10 cases in and 1 out of 5 deaths from lung cancer. So around 8 out of 10 cases of cancer are because of tobacco. Lung cancers, not all the cancers. And 1 in 5 deaths from lung cancer is because of, sorry, is because of lung cancer. Just a second. So this accounts about 29% of all the cancer deaths throughout the world. It takes many years to develop and cannot be seen on X-ray in early stages. So the most important fact about this lung cancer is it is not that easy to identify in the initial stages. So once the patient has very severe signs and symptoms of breathing problem or obstruction, then only he will come to know that he is having any cancer, unless you go for a screening, proper screening. So it is not that easy to identify if a person is suffering with lung cancer. It takes enough time, at least after 10 years of continuous smoking, then only the signs and symptoms are more visible. But it's quite common that if a person is smoking, chain smoker for a long period of time, it's his duty to go to the hospital, get a screening done, because X-ray is enough to find out if there is any kind of cancer. And more than that, if any treatments are necessary, it can be prescribed by the physician. Often metastasis before it is found. So the very severe thing about this is the metastasis already starts before you start the screening. The spread of the cancer already starts before you start screening, and when you go for any kind of treatment, although the patient is in the third stage, so it's very difficult to save the patient, and literally he dies. People who don't smoke but who breathe the smoke of other have a higher risk of lung cancer, as you all know. Second hand smokers, we call it as, the person is smoking, but the one who is sitting adjacent to him or along with him, he smokes whatever he breathes out. So this is more dangerous than compared to the person who is smoking. The second hand smokers, we call it as, so they also have the similar risk in comparison with the person who is smoking. So there is around 30% greater risk of developing lung cancer among the people who are second-hand smokers. So for example, husband is smoking and wife sits beside him or the child sits beside him. They are also in high risk zone of getting a lung cancer. Next slide, please. Yeah. Screening, smoking is most preventable. See, it's very easy to stop smoking if you have a proper kind of guidance and counseling. The cause of death, lung cancer screening is currently not advised even for people of high risk, such as those who smoke. So it should be made a protocol throughout the in the hospital that if anyone is smoking for a period of time like more than 10 years, he should immediately go to the hospital and get the screening done, get the X-ray done. National 10-year study launched in 2002 looked at whether a new X-ray method called as spiral CT scanning. So we say it as spiral CT scanning, which is most advanced in fact, but it is not accessible in all the places. So in the developing countries, especially the poverty-driven countries, it's very difficult to get this kind of CT scanning techniques. So my suggestion will be that if anyone is smoking more than 10 years of age, 10 years, we should immediately go for screening. The most common screening is an X-ray scanning or a pulmonary function test, and it can be easily found out whether he is having any obstruction or any kind of cancer in his lungs. Next slide, please. Basic facts about cervical cancer. Let's go with cervical cancer now. The primary cause of cervical cancer is infection with human papilloma virus. So this is the most important causative factor for cervical cancer. That is human papilloma virus. When found and treated early, cervical cancer often can be cured. So it's most easy to cure if it is identified or diagnosed in the early stages. Symptoms usually do not appear until abnormal cervical cells becomes cancerous. So when the cancer cells are more grown, then only you will find out whether the patient is having cervical cancer. Until the last stage, you won't be able to find out. Vaccines against HPV have been developed and shown to be effective. So, in some of the countries, in the developing countries, it's been mandatory that a lady should get HPV vaccine whenever is in the childbearing age or in the sexually active age. But in the developing countries, it's not that common. And new cases of deaths from cervical cancer have gone down in the past several years due to screening. So the screening techniques have quite increased in India also. Almost like all the districts are having cancer hospitals and specialized screening techniques. So because of that, the cervical cancer screening has become advanced, and we have very less cases throughout the country in the recent days. Next slide, please. So regarding screening, if the screening is done regularly, it can be easily prevented. So if the screening is done vigilantly, properly and correctly, there is nothing to worry. We can easily save the life of the lady. Screening should become 3 years from the woman becomes sexually active, but no later than 21 years of age. So after 21 years of age, a lady can go for cervical screening. American Cancer Society recommends screening with a regular pap test every year or a liquid-based pap test every 2 years. So if the lady is sexually active, she can go for a pap smear test. It's very easy, very simple. It takes very less time. If she is suspecting that she may have cervical cancer, or she may be suspected with cervical cancer, or in her family member or someone is suffering with any kind of cancer, she can go for that. Next slide, please. Let's go with the prostate cancer, which is the most common type of cancer in men. Usually, it is found in the people who are in advanced age, like elderly patients. Prostate cancer is second leading cause of death in men, second only to lung cancer. So among men, it is the second leading cause of death. While one man in six will get prostate cancer during his lifetime, only one man in 33 will die of this disease. So death rate is quite less compared to the morbid rate, but still the prostate cancer is very popular among men. So after the certain age, the person who is more than 65 years old, he should go for screening of prostate enlargement or any prostate hardening or anything. He should go immediately after 65 years of age. African American men are at high risk, but India also, or Caucasian or any kind of people, it's most common among elderly people. Next slide, please. Regarding screening, a 5-year survival rate of men diagnosed at the local or regional stage approaches around 100%. So if the person is having prostate cancer, patient may have 5-year survival rate. Beginning at the age of 50, men should be offered a prostate-specific antigen blood test and a digital rectal examination every year. So it should be made very common, a common practice that every 5 years after the age of 50 years, we should go for an prostate-specific antigen test, which can easily identify if there is any kind of prostate enlargement or if there is any risk of having a prostate enlargement. A digital rectal examination, you can Google it, or it's available in any kind of medical surgical nursing book. In that, you can find out how it is done, a digital rectal examination with the help of fingers. With the help of this, you can find out if there is any enlargement of prostate in the elderly. African American men are at increased risk of prostate cancer and should be tested beginning at the age of 45. As you know, already I said, the African American men are at high risk of getting prostate cancer. So they should go for screening at the beginning of 45 years old. Men with father brother or son with prostate cancer before age 65 should be tested. So if anyone who is having any of his sibling as well as his father or his brother or his relatives with prostate cancer, they should go for screening of prostate cancer, prostate specific antigen after a certain age of after 65 years old, even though if he doesn't have any kind of signs and symptoms related to it. Next slide, please. Let's go with the skin cancer. There are mainly two types of skin cancer. One is melanoma and non-melanoma. Melanoma it accounts about 4% of skin cancer throughout the world, but causes about 79% of skin cancer death in the whole world. The number of new cases of melanoma in US is on the rise because of because of global warming, because of the radiations, because of the thinning of the ozone layer. People are more exposed to ultraviolet rays. Because of this, skin cancer is at the rise now, right now. Non-melanoma basal cell or squamous cell carcinoma, most common type of skin cancer, more than 1 million cases a year. We can find this. It's most curable. It's not very dangerous to life. People do not often die of this cancer. About 1,000 to 2,000 people die of non-melanoma skin cancer per year in the US. Men get this cancer about twice as often as women. So men are more prone to get this disease, non-melanoma cancer, compared to women. Next slide, please. When you talk about screening of skin cancer, the best detection is to recognize changes in the skin growth or appearance of new growth. So when you see any kind of growth or any kind of marking over your skin, you can find out by certain characteristics like ABCD rule. We can use this. A means asymmetry. When the borders of the skin patch are asymmetrical, there is irregular border, there is color variability in the skin patch, diameter is around 6 millimeter, more than 6 millimeter, and enlargement or evolution. If there is any enlargement or it's a bumping of the skin, immediately you should go for any kind of immediately you should go for skin evaluation with a skin specialist. Non-melanoma, non-healing, changing, growing sore or bump. A sore which does not heal. A sore, even though you take proper treatment, if you take antibiotics, even though if you use antiseptic solutions and creams and other things, or proper dressing also, still the skin sore does not heal. Then you should immediately go for screening of this by a skin specialist. Next slide, please. Risk factors. When you talk about risk factors, let's go with the risk factors now. The risk factors which cannot be changed. One is a family or personal history of cancer. If your parents, your grandmother, your grandfather, or someone is suffering with cancer, you cannot change it. Age. With the increase in the age, the risk for cancer also increases. Males are more prone to get cancer compared to women, but it's not that it's a controversial thing. Both are, you can say that both are equally exposed to cancer. Race, yes, of course, African American men and other kind of ethnicity are more common to get this disease. Genetics, of course, if there is any genetic predisposition, there is chances of getting cancer. Next slide, please. Yeah, the risk factors which can be changed. Like if someone is smoking or using tobacco, he can quit that and he can be safe. Diet, obesity. If there is excessive weight, if the patient is too obese, he can change his dietary patterns. He can save himself. Physical inactivity. Go for a physical activity. If someone is alcoholic, try to reduce taking of alcohol and sun exposure. Nowadays, to prevent skin cancer, the best thing is use of shield, use of umbrella or something which can help in preventing any kind of cancer. Next slide, please. Especially skin cancer. So how to reduce this risk? One is follow testing guidelines. For any kind of cancer, please follow the local testing guidelines. You, you can easily find out in the Google. You can easily find out in any kind of nearest hospital. In India, the testing guidelines of cancer is been given by the Cancer Society of India as well as the government of India. You can follow it and properly screen the patient. Know your family history. If anyone is suffering with cancer in your family, then you should be very cautious. So you should take care of yourself better than others. Eat a healthy, well balanced diet. It's very important. Get regular exercises. Do not smoke or use other tobacco products. Avoid excessive alcohol consumption and use the slip, slap, slop method of skin protection. This is very common in the Western countries. The slip, slap, slop is slip means as much as possible cover your skin whenever you go to expose your body to the sun. Slap is just put a hat or use an umbrella, and slop is you can use a good sunscreen lotion whenever you go outside of your house for any kind of activity when you are supposed to go to the sunlight. But as much as possible, do not expose your skin to the direct sunlight. Next slide, please. Yeah, around one third of the fatal cancer are because of tobacco use. More than 60 cancer cases uh, causing agents found in tobacco. Around 60 cancer producing agents are found in tobacco. We call it as nicotine. If a person stops smoking before lung cancer develops, the lung tissue slowly returns to normal. So if a person stops smoking, if a person stops smoking, the lung can revive itself, protect itself, and it can come to its original stage. Nicotine replacement. There are many nicotine replacement therapies. There are tobacco cessation organization. There is something called as e-cigarettes. So these all things can be used uh, to help the person who is a chronic smoker, and you can help the person to quit smoking. But it's not that easy, but it's not that difficult also. There are nicotine organizations. We call it as the nicotine anonymous. So the patients can be referred there, and they can get the people who have already quit smoking, and they can help them to quit smoke. One important thing an employer can do is ban tobacco use in the workplace. The employer can tell that tobacco smoking is not allowed. It's already been uh, done in India. Most of the public places are not allowed for smoking. There should be a specific place for smoking areas, as in airports it has been done. In India, it's very easy, but in some poverty-driven and developing countries, it's not that common. Even smoking is not affordable in poverty-driven countries also. Though this should be very much stringently applied in the population. Next slide, please. Okay. About one third of fatal cancer causes could be prevented by better nutrition and physical activity. So we can prevent the cancer risk by just doing some common modifications in our lifestyle. Adults should get moderate to vigorous activity for minimum of 30 to 45 minutes, 5 or more days a week. Shown to reduce risk of breast cancer and colon cancer. Children and adolescents should go for 60 minutes a day, moderate to vigorous walking or running or jogging or whichever kind of exercise, physical activity they can do. It should be done 5 days a week, around 60 minutes or 30 to 45 minutes in a day. Next slide. Ah. Eat 5 or more servings of fruits, vegetables. So put more colors in your food, or put more vegetarian vegetables in your food. Choose whole grain foods. Limit your intake of red meat. Red meat should be avoided as much as possible. It should be limited. It's not that you should stop eating. Maintain a healthy weight. You should check your BMI and proper weight. You can get the chart of your weight. Check the. You can get the standardized chart of weight of Indian people in Google. You can find out. Balance caloric intake and physical activity. Lose weight if currently overweight or obese. Try to reduce your weight or lose some weight. If you drink alcohol beverages, limit consumption. So if you are taking more than the prescribed amount of alcohol, please try to reduce it. So these all things can help in preventing cancer risk. Next slide, please. So another thing is slip-on shirt. That is, whenever you go to the sun, direct sun, please put as much as possible, cover your body as much as possible, so that the direct sunlight does not touch your skin. Slap a hat, put a hat, or you can use an umbrella or any kind of shield, or try to walk in the pedestrian so that you don't get the direct sunlight. Slop is use a sunscreen whenever you go to sunlight. Look for shade in the middle of the day and use the sunglasses whenever it is necessary. Next slide, please. So these are some of the things which can be done for the awareness of cancer and to prevent the cancer risk. But when you take the proper management, you can easily prevent yourself with any kind of cancer. But there are some things like you cannot change, like your age, your genetic predisposition, your family history. These cannot be changed. So if someone is having any kind of such history, so he should go for proper screening and help himself to be away from cancer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Girish. Girish sir has mentioned now regarding preventive measures that early screening of almost all the cancer like colon cancer, breast cancer, skin cancer, and lung cancer. And also, sir has mentioned regarding risk factors and how to reduce the risk of getting the cancer. Thank you, Girish, for wonderful talk on preventive measures and awareness regarding cancer. Now I request Girish to introduce Vice Dean, uh, International Linkage, Bulehora University, Ethiopia, to introduce him for introductory remarks, for concluding remarks.
Thank you, sir. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce Mr. Sudhir Kumar Reddy. Unfortunately, our Director International Linkage of Bulehora University has sudden transfer, so he has to leave today. We have a very eminent person. His name is Sudhir Kumar Reddy, and he is vice dean from International Linkage. He is associate professor at Department of Technology and Electrical Engineering. He has many affiliations in abroad, India and abroad. India and abroad. And I request you, sir, to please give some concluding remarks. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. So, namaskar. Uh, when Girish started our collaboration with you, it was certainly, very much, interesting because this was the first linkage with Health Science University, and we certainly appreciated it. And now this webinar, certainly gave a lot of opportunities for further interaction. And certainly we are very much happy to have this type of events that is mutually beneficial to both you and us. And in the future we are looking forward for more such events in which directly knowledge transfer will happen, and even if possible, if the funds support, we can also look forward for faculty exchange, and even if possible, students can also come over here, and our students can go over to your place for some kind of internship or short-term courses. So this is certainly a very welcome step. So I would like to thank you, KLE University, for all these opportunities that you have extended to us, and certainly we are also looking forward to give you back something. So hope it will be really, really good for both of us in the long term. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your support. Thank you.
Success of this webinar. We hope that in future also we conduct many webinars. Okay. And, I thank you, Girish, and also I thank Vice Dean of International Linkage, the Bulehora University, Ethiopia, for accepting our invitation for concluding remarks and for also giving concluding remarks.
On behalf of principal and the faculty of medical surgical nursing, thank Girish for taking this initiative, and Girish has given us the Girish has taken initiation to do with this, to go with international webinar. Thank you, Girish. And actually, we were expecting to do this on, supposed to do it on 4th of Feb. But because of some unavoidable circumstances, we have postponed and we completed today successfully. And thank you, Girish, for taking the initiative. Hope we'll do few more further in the future. Thank you, Girish.
Thank you very
And
much
thank you
for
all
your
the
kind words,
students
ma'am.
for patiently listening.
Thank you very much for your kind words. It's always an honor to be associated with KLE. I would like to thank the principal, the faculty of KLE Institute of Nursing Sciences, Dr. Professor Sudha Reddy. I would like to thank Professor Priti Bhupali for giving such kind words and encouraging words. I would like to thank Mr. Ongoda Patil sir for smoothly organizing all these events and coordinating so perfectly. I would like to thank all the technical teams behind the screen. I would like to thank all the students for listening these sessions very patiently. And at the end, I would like to thank the president, the management, and all the stakeholders of Pulehora University for extending their help and their encouragement in organizing this webinar. I would like to thank Mr. Sudhir Kumar Ultre for availing himself for the concluding remarks. I would like to thank the Directorate of International Linkage also for being with us and supporting us. And thank you very much to one and all.
I thank from our department, Honogoda, Harish, Jonathan, Ramesh, and all, and especially the Harish, IT person, for supporting in all the IT technologies. Thank you, Harish.
Thank you, Mr. Harish. All the technical people, I already said. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So let's conclude, sir. Thank you very much.